Jeannie became adept at the opposite of breathing and made very little sound at all. But her mother's orchestra had other plans. Her gangs of woodwind would heckle from buildings through menacing throats of gargoyles, while brassy-eyed buttons of anonymous instruments winked like fish skins from hedges. They always seemed to meet her at the importunest of moments, on Saturdays spent working at hotel wedding functions, when the sudden exhalation of an untuned celesta might shatter her tray of champagne flutes, or the time she tried to kiss Serena behind the privacy of her locker, only to find it filled with cymbals, stacked like dry stone making horizontal purdas of the sweetly staling air. It was only the one cymbal that slipped out of line, but Serena backed away, unravelled by its timbre. Jeannie was left in the reverberant air, breathing in the lustful geometry of lockers, the plasterboard walls of discoloured posters and fading acne of blue tack, the fluids that flaked off sticky-back textbooks, particles from the prefabs that rose in wet fields and found their way to her through commutes of corridors, which offered themselves as half-bleached sacraments, which Jeannie took in wholly. And the ravens brought her bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and she drank of the brook. Stag night in the embassy with Jeannie. And when the men woke up on the wrong side of history, it was an unfamiliar feeling they at first mistook for a hangover. In the sick morning light of a breakfast bar of a chain hotel, of average and ubiquitous luxury, contemplating their actions of the night before, nudging underbaked knobs of almond croissants with incremental crumbs of mirth. What none of them could recall was how they'd ended the night in the embassy's basement, inside a crate of flags where they'd woken whimpering, top and tail, that morning. The flags had seemed plain enough the night before, but now each of the men's cheeks were creased with the nondescript weft of nylon, whose symbols of unknown nations showed no signs of fading with time. The faces of the men bore puffy, sheepish witness to a commonwealth of newfound loyalties, formed in the overnight scapes of neutrality with slow and steady aqueous agencies, by Jeannie who had lured them to the crate, which was also a front for the club she ran called Limbo. What we need is a story, they murmur, passing a small pot of jam between them. The men continue to murmur and pass the jam, the jar becoming thinner and thinner as their hands wear away the glass that turns back into sand, centuries, which the men continue to pass as tight fistfuls of land, which slip through their fingers and make filigree around their feet, that stacks into deposits, that grow into columns of increasing precarity and tower above the men, who fail to look up as the towers collapse and brecciate their lungs, which comes to be known as the rapture of alluvium. What Sister Weimer avowed. Sister Weimer sighs and takes off her glasses. The maze's edges blur into thickets. Rhododendrons, she says, or something about capitalism. A hook of stray ivy snags on her wimple. She sits as composed as the air between bench slats. We lean back and listen to the maze's shrieking. This maze is old, old as the wilderness sifted for pleasure. See the meritocratic fountains, the aspirational hedges. Lines of parents file into the maze. Before, they attest, down payments on topiary were par for the course, but today they've brought children to learn about concentrics, tulipomania cupping itself as fathers do time in circles, pretending not to see as progeny dart through wattle, their flashes of analogue skin that distend the winter-thin scrub. The blind man's bluff has an adverse effect. The children go unseen for austerities of time. Every so often